So let's get started. Here's what we're going to talk about today. Basically from soup to nuts. How did we come up with this idea? How did we do it? And what's the future of it? So what is a gravel bed? It's basically a bed with gravel in it. So it is an irrigated bed of pea gravel. Okay, and we add some sand in there. It is really constructed to place and house bare root trees and shrubs with the end goal of increasing their fibrous root growth. We've done this to plant the trees in the fall, which is a preferred time to plant, believe it or not, because then these trees and shrubs don't face the harsh summer and the watering needs necessary to get through the season. So that is what a gravel bed is. We put pea gravel and sand in our gravel bed, and research shows that when water is met with pea gravel, there's actually potassium and silica that is produced, and that is good for tree root growth. Okay, so how do we get started on this? Basically, in 2020, I saw the Richmond gravel bed, and I thought, this is so spectacular. What a great idea for us to do in Loudoun to increase tree canopy. So that's how it got started. I worked with our commercial horticulturalist, Beth Sastre. We put together a very basic plan and try to figure out, well, who could we partner? And then along comes that ugly thing called COVID. That delayed our project for at least two and a half years. We picked it back up when Amazon, so that's the AWS grant. So Amazon was put out for a sustainability grant in Northern Virginia to help give back to the community because of all the data centers we do have here. So we thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity for us to get funding for this gravel bed. Serendipity, because Master Gardener College last year was for tree stewards, and we knew there was going to be the tree curriculum. So we all at the same time got commitment from those who wanted to go be tree stewards, interns, that they would take on this project. So it all came together, fabulous. The one stipulation on the grant was we had to use the money in 6 months, which is a very quick time. Okay. So we assembled these mighty 12 tree steward interns. And what I did is I introduced the project to them when they came back from Master Gardener College. We broke it out into all those team components, which was really necessary to be able to get this project done in the time necessary, and also to get some saplings in there so we could test them. So we had these teams. We had 2 team leads. We had a lead of the construction, and you'll see why when you look at these phenomenal beds. A sapling team lead, so they had to go out and find the saplings, order them, secure them. Education team, they were in charge of all the education, flyers, signage, banners, and everything that we had. There was a management team for the gravel bed, so you can't just plant these things in there and walk away. So they had significant planning with the management team on who's going to go look at them, make sure everything was going as it should be with the water and the trees. And then, of course, once you put them in, you have to take them out. So there was someone in charge of the extraction team and planting these little babies. And now we're planning for the future. So we had 2 beds and 2 different parks. All right, so what happens? Well, first you have to prepare the ground and get ready for construction. So we're very lucky that we partnered with 2 parks. One is called Claude Moore, and the other one is Franklin Park. They were more than happy and very gracious to allow us to put these beds in their parks. And they also were providing the water for us. So they prepared the ground. They removed anything that needed to keep the bed flat when they were doing the construction. The Tree Steward team had all kinds of meetings to get this prepared. They had a detailed spreadsheet when they were going to start the construction, who was doing what tools were needed, and what day it was going to take place. It was phenomenal. So then they had to get to work. So here's some great photos. Okay, the first bed, so this is Claude Moore. This is our 10 by 10 bed. So it was a little smaller, and you can see it was put kind of back in the shade there, but that's okay. So they had to make sure everything was level. Those boards in the frame, each board was 12 feet tall. So that was the initiation there. We had to have posts put in because we needed fencing for any critters that might come in, any deer that might come in, or unfortunately, we had to make sure there was no vandalism. So we had to put those posts in, enter the gravel. This is a picture of them loading the gravel. It was, let me check my notes, 5 cubic yards of gravel went into this 10 by 10 bed. And luckily, the truck was able to back up and put it in there so they didn't have to use wheelbarrows to take that much gravel and put it in there. So you'll see they're putting it in the bed there on the left, and on the right, that was erecting the fencing that went around it. There was also sand put into the gravel, and that was to help with the moisture. All right. And that was the finished gravel bed. Look how beautiful it is. And that is, yes, an old banner from way back when. So we found that and put it on there until we could get more formal signage put on. But it was ready for saplings at this point. So you can see how beautiful it is. The park was very happy that it looked like this. Now, not all gravel beds need to look like this. In fact, if you look at the University of Minnesota's manual that we were using as kind of a draft for how we would put this together, you can just group the gravel. You don't have to have all this together. And a lot of times it's used in building, when they're erecting buildings, and it's just this temporary type of a bed. But we knew we were going to be out in the public. We knew it needed to look nice. So this is what the first bed ended up looking like. And I do have to say we had some family members that were engineers that helped this along to make it look like it did and function like it does. So phenomenal effort. So after, obviously, it's built, you got to get ready for what you're going to plant. So bare root saplings. So what is the benefit of bare root saplings? You all are master gardeners, right? You can see the roots when you buy a bare root sapling. They're lighter, they're easier to plant, and it just makes more sense. They have a better life expectancy when you put them in the ground. The roots aren't typically circling, so this whole thing was for bare root saplings. So the team that was in charge of securing these obviously chose natives. So these are the 12 native saplings that were chosen to put in this bed, 2 each. So we had 2 each. Because the time of year doing this was the end of July, there weren't bare root saplings available. Usually you typically get them in the spring, or you order them in the fall for delivery in the spring. So we had to buy containerized saplings. They did get them from Earth Sangha. So we had to wash off soil. And that's what you see on the left-hand side. They were washing off the soil, keeping the roots moist the entire time, because that's the key to keep these babies alive. So after they were washed off, they were measured. So that's what's going on in the right-hand frame. They looked at both the length, the width, and the density of those before they went in the bed. As you can see, each sapling has, well, you can't see probably, but there is a label on what that is, because once you stick them in there and they lose their leaves, you're not going to know what type of tree that is. So there's a label on each plant to know exactly what that is, and there's a number that goes with each one of those. So Katie Amon, she sat there. She was the director of taking them out and putting them into the bed. So she has this beautiful spreadsheet. She tracked the whole thing. She took pictures of them so you would know what was going on before and after. And it's just a phenomenal database of information for, basically, this was our test. All right, so I actually snapped a picture of number 23. So we're going to follow number 23 along. Look how beautiful that sapling is. He's got some great top growth, but the roots are just phenomenal. Anyway, in the end of July. So that's how number 23 redwood dogwood went in to the bed. And again, keeping those roots moist. All right. So next, we had to heel them in because you're not actually planting them. It is not a medium for planting. So we're heeling in these saplings. And Stephanie Meeks there on the left did extensive research on the best way to put these babies into this gravel. So you'll see on the left, there's 2 boards that were done to pull the gravel apart and nest these saplings in there. And they also used a military style shovel, one of those little shovels, to help scoop it away. So they kind of used 2 different methods here. But it was the best way to get the roots in there. You spread them out and you put the gravel back on top. Most of the saplings that we did put in there were 1/3 of an inch or less in caliper. So depending on what size you have is the distance apart from each of them. So obviously, you know, the length of the roots are going to vary, but because ours were smaller, we put them probably within a foot of each other in this gravel bed. So the 10 by 10 gravel bed was able to house 24 saplings. So you can see them in there. You'll also see a stake in this picture. So stakes were put down into the gravel bed to check the moisture so they could pull it out and see, you know, well, how's the moisture way down there at the bottom to make sure these babies are getting enough moisture. All right. So next came the irrigation. So once you've got, you know, the plants in there, sorry, this picture is not in focus. I did have to zoom in on another picture, so it didn't come out very well. So irrigation, there was a 100-foot hose attached to a visitor center that you can't see here. They actually buried the line, the park buried the line to get it to this gravel bed. And they wound it in, put a hole in the bed there. So inside there, and this was a locked door, so only the tree stewards and the park employees could get in there. So inside the gravel bed is an irrigation timer. And then they wound this irrigation hose all the way through the bed, ensuring that all the saplings were going to be watered equally. Okay. And then again, look at this. You can see the stakes in there and the different parts of the bed. This bed is a little more in the shade than our second bed. So we had to make sure that it wasn't getting too much water, too less water, something like that. All right. So we have irrigation. Well, they're in the bed. Now what? Well, they have to make sure they're doing okay. So they did rotating schedules and they set it up in our Better Impact. They set up Better Impact schedules of who was going to go and check on the bed as well as the saplings. So at first, the water was on 100 minutes a day. So 4 25-minute segments spaced throughout the day so that they would never dry out. And so it was 1 in the middle of the night, I believe, 1 right before morning, and then two spaced out during the day. So they had to check and make sure that that was enough water, you know, that the saplings were doing okay. So they went twice a day, morning and night, to make sure that they were doing okay at first. And then after 2 weeks, they felt comfortable enough that they could go and check on them every other day. They did find that the 100 minutes a day was too much. So they backed it off a little bit to 92 minutes a day from that. So they took off 2 minutes from each cycle. All right, so 3 months later. So this project was done in a record amount of time, but we only had from July to the end of October. So we had 3 months. Typically a gravel bed can be 6 months. So we're so excited about doing it this year. We can actually have it for 6 months. So you had to have extraction. So enter another team who was in charge of extraction. So you'll see on the left, they were using pitchforks to get in there. And on the right, they're also using their hands to gently pull out the roots and get the trees over to be measured. But if you look closely down at the base of this pitchfork and this person's foot, you'll see how moist that is. The pea gravel is actually dark, so it's still moist. And on the right-hand picture, obviously just taking, look at the different colors of the gravel, you can see that it just was very successful in keeping these little babies moist, which is what they need to succeed. all right? Because they're not getting nutrients any other way except from that silica and potassium. All right, so here's my number 23 red twig dogwood. Look at that. Look at the length of that and the density of it. So here's the side by side. So there's your difference. Look at the difference in those roots just after 3 months. Very proud of that. So we pulled them out of the gravel bed. We kept them moist. They went over to the measuring station again, a photo, the number. They were actually put in a plastic bag to keep them moist before we went over to planting them. Luckily enough, the park received all of the saplings. So we didn't have to worry about transporting them somewhere, keeping them moist. We walked over 100 feet to their woodsy area to be able to plant them right in the ground. And they dug the holes for us. It wasn't the easiest place to plant them. It was kind of in their woods, and I'll show you a picture in a minute. And the native soil was very rocky, so it was a little hard for us to put some of that soil back, but we were able to dig some soil back in the woods and bring it to plant them out, making sure the roots were spread out and their root flare was still there if they had one, and we covered it with soil. We also had to purchase sleeves because we don't want deer browse on our brand new babies we put into the ground, and those sleeves were secured with stakes. And of course, 2 gallons of water were put on top of each sapling. So here's what it looked like in our little woodsy area. There was phenomenal amount of detail that went into this. It wasn't as easy as it looked. It started out in the morning. It was very cold because this was November 1st, and then it got warmer. But each tree is in a specific location based on its growing habit. So it's not like this is haphazard planting of these trees anywhere. They did a lot of detailed work to figure out what tree should go where. And then you can see the sleeve there, very tall, and the stake on there. And there is a netting on the top, so critters, birds, whatever, don't get in there and they can't get back out. So we put those on each one of our tubes to make sure that we're not, killing wildlife. Here is the mighty team that finished it up. And at this point, we had to pass the keys over to the park, and hopefully they are taking care of it. We still go over there every once in a while. This is very close to my house, so I can run over there and just make a check on what's going on. But that was our whirlwind 3 months at Clodmore Park, and the 12 members were just phenomenal every step of the way. So I want to talk a little bit about how we measured things, how Katie measured things. So she measured obviously the width going in, the length, as well as the density, and coming out. So this graph shows the blue is before. So that's when we pulled them out of the pots, held them up to the grid. And after is obviously when we pulled them out of the gravel bed to put them in the ground. So the ones that did the best, 3 and 4, and that's an ironwood. So that had width growth. Very nice. Persimmon, 9 and 10. They had great width growth. Hard to say. And Black Hall Viburnum also had one of the best growths. In my little number 23, I showed him here, he had 2 inches of width growth from coming in to coming out. And this was in a 3-month period. So to summarize, we had 22 trees where their width either stayed the same or increased. And 17 of those increased an inch or more in width. So we think this was very successful. And that's basically telling you what I just said. So the trees that had less or no width growth were river birch, dwarf hackberry, and American blatternut. So let's look a little bit at the density. And density was rated from 1 to 5, where 5 is the most dense. A little hard to figure out your density because it is kind of subjective. It depends on who's looking at it, the sun, how did it sit into the gravel when you pulled it out. Might have been, condensed a little bit, but this was the before and after density. So those ones with the best density, 1 and 2, and that was river birch. 3 and 4, there's our ironwood again. And 21 and 22, that is the black haw viburnum. So here is verbally what I just told you, but it's really kind of cool to note that the river birch had one of the lowest widths, but here it has one of the best densities. That's kind of cool. And then the ironwood and the black haw viburnum were best in both of those categories. And the persimmon actually lost density, but remember, 2 slides forward, it had one of the best growths. So it's all, how is this falling out in terms of width and length and density? So as long as there's a category where they've done something better, we feel is very successful. And it's very interesting to see the difference in all of these roots from all these different types of trees. All right. So moving on further, here's the education team. So they stepped in. We had signs put up at the demo at the demo gravel bed. So there's this outdoor sign, and that's what's on the left. It tells the public, what are we doing here? What is the benefit of a gravel bed, the benefit of bare roots, and planting in the fall. So that's what that sign says there on the left. We obviously did a QR code to our website so you can get more of this information and how we did what we did. And then up there on the top, we had a banner designed, and it just got installed on both beds. And it basically says, these beds are sleeping right now, but look for it, in the spring, we'll plant them out. So it gives the public a little more knowledge on what's going on here. And again, they can scan that QR code and it goes to our website with a lot of information. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the second bed. So these poor tree stewards who are tired, for lack of a better word, from doing number 1, we had to use the rest of our grant within 6 months. So they came back and did construction on bed number 2 at a different park, a park that's more west in the county. This bed was twice as big as the first one, so twice as much work. The park again removed the soil, as you see there, and then they got started building exactly the same type of bed as the one at Claude Moore, only it's double the size. There it is on the left, almost finished without the gravel in there, without the fencing. On the right, you have 2 people grading that pea gravel in there. We did find that the initial pea gravel wasn't enough, so we had to get another load of pea gravel in there, just because the bed was so big, and I think it settled down into the earth a little more than anticipated. Here's a finished product, equally as gorgeous as the first one. You have stairs to get in there. There's a door with a lock. We did put the signage out there. It's right there on the left-hand side, so that kind of tells the public what we're doing. The reason this one has a tarp over it is so during the winter, there's no seedlings from trees or any type of garbage that may blow in there. More specifically, grasses or something like that may get down into that gravel or that sand. And cause something to sprout, because you don't want anything sprouting in there that doesn't make it positive. So there is a tarp over at Claude Moore. We did put tarps on both of them, so cleanup hopefully will be not so hard when we go back in to plant them in April. So what was the cost of these? Our AWS grant was $10,000 minus the fee from Virginia Tech for writing the grant. So we had to use that $9,500 or a majority of it. We had to show them we used a majority of it for them to release funds. So they gave us $6,000 initially. So obviously we had to start the second bid. We had to buy things in advance to be able to get the rest of the money released. So it just really didn't cost that much. Labor, absolutely 100% in labor. for these volunteers. So the 10 by 10 was only $2,200. The 20 by 10 was $5,500. So it wasn't double, because we did find there needed to be a little more gravel put in the bed than just the double of the first bed, and some more tools needed to be purchased. So we still have money left in that grant. That's only $7,700. So we still have, $1,500 plus left to purchase something else that goes into these beds. We did go ahead and purchase saplings for this year's planting last year. So we were able to get bare root saplings that will be planted in this April. And like I said, our partner, we're lucky enough that the parks, both parks, allow us to use for the water. So the future of these beds, both of these beds will hold 75 saplings together. So the second bed can hold 50. The first bed can hold 25. Obviously, it depends on the caliber of what you put in there. I do know we bought some larger saplings this year. I think a couple are 5 or 6 feet that will go in these beds. Obviously, this is a huge educational opportunity, both for the rest of the master gardeners that weren't involved in this opportunity, as well as the public. So there's education opportunities, and the parks are asking us already, can we have an event around when you plant them in the gravel bed? There's also opportunity to give an outdoor lecture. This is what we're doing. This is what we're offering. And by the way, the trees go to the public. They go to the county. Education on pulling them out. What are we doing? Education on planting. What's the best way to plant a bare root, and why would you do it in the fall? So we're very hopeful that some communities will see this when we finally get out our press release. HOAs can do this to increase their natives in their properties. We're really keen to try to partner with a high school. A science teacher could put a smaller garden or a smaller bed in one of their properties, and the kids can take ownership of a tree. They could adopt a tree, and when they come back from graduation or college or whatever, they can come back and say, that's my tree, that's my tree. So we're very hopeful to spread this out throughout the county and have other organizations building these beds, because I think we're done building the beds. We will be maintaining the saplings, however, and planting them. This is the mighty team of the 12 individuals that got their project in record timing. They all had their 30 hours, I think within 2 months, maybe 3. So they graduated as tree stewards when we had our big banquet in December. Kim Arriaga and Stephanie Meeks are the leads, taking this into the future and working with the parks on any type of educational events, as well as organizing the plantings in both beds. And I think that's it. So I am happy to take questions. I think there's a couple of the master gardeners on that will be able to answer if I can't answer any of the questions.
Thanks so much, Barb. That was amazing. I'm like very amazed and impressed by this.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
So we have a bunch of questions here in the chat. If anyone else has more questions, just go ahead and drop them in there, and we'll kind of go down the list for as many as we have time for. The first question is, can the trees be overwintered in the same bed?
No, they can't. They'll freeze. Now, maybe down in Florida, but you can't, because there's no medium that's going to keep them from freezing. It's too porous. Yeah, so no, that's not good.
Second question was, what type of sand did you use in addition to the pea gravel?
Yeah, that I don't know. So if one of the master gardeners is on, could answer that. I think it was just bags of sand.
Yeah, typically there's 2 types at some of the stores. There's your type of playground sand, and there's another sand that we all typically will add to some of our soil, and just your regular plant sand that's used for planting.
Awesome.
you.
And do you happen to know the ratio of sand to gravel?
I know there was 5 cubic yards of sand, and I think there was 5 bags of sand, but I'm not sure how much was in the sand. Kim, do you know that?
We have all of that written down and we can definitely access it. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. It was obviously way more gravel and then just the sand that like Barb said, the sandbags mixed in. We do have it written down though.
I think it might have been 20-pound bags of sand, and it was like, what is it, like a tenth of the bags to the cubic feet. So yeah, but we can get you the actual ratio.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then we had a bunch of questions about the sleeves that you used when you planted the saplings out. How do the sleeves work for getting sun, and how long do you leave them in there?
You leave the sleeves on until the tree comes out of the top, and basically the base of the tree or the diameter of the trunk is too big, is getting too big for the tube. The tube, is obviously meant for, a growing a full-size tree. And it's meant to protect them from deer and whatnot, mowers, things like that.
There's probably a really great pub out there somewhere about using sleeves. Okay, another question about fertilizer. Did you fertilize at all?
Nope, you don't fertilize when you plant trees.
And will you do the same species for the next planting, or are you going to try different species?
They're different, right, Katie?
Yeah, some of the same, some different. It's kind of experimental at this point.
Right.
And then for following up on the growth of the saplings now that they're planted out, do you have plans to kind of assess how they're doing?
Well, we would definitely want to see if they leaf out this spring.
Yeah, we'll take some turns going over there to see how they're doing.
Okay, and a couple more questions here. Charles asks, the primary motivation is to maximize the root mass. Is there data on the viability benefit compared with direct planting of the source whips?
I don't know. That's a great question.
I bet there is. If I'm sure there must be a pub on, or someone's done a research study on looking at like the root mass of, bare root trees and what the ideal is. And I can look up on the Virginia Tech research database. I can look and see if there is a study on that. And if anybody ever has a request for something like that you just think of, just email me and I'd be happy to look on the, the research, like through the library for you.
Thank you.
Okay, somebody else asked about screening the base of the saplings to protect from ground digging pests like moles.
No, we pounded, we pounded the stakes in and the sleeves seemed to be enough. But no, we didn't put any wiring or anything down from ground diggers. But so I guess we'll see if they have them over there. We'll see if they were compromised.
And then William asked about the dates for the plantings and visiting to help and observe. If you do events, like if the park did want to do an event or something, just let us know. And that would be something we could put in the biweekly email and make sure people know about. Do you have any dates for this year though that you would be appropriate to share?
Not yet. I think we're still figuring out when in April, but they will go in April and they will be extracted at the end of October or November, but we have two beds now, so it's going to be a little more extensive to get that done. So definitely, Devin, we'll make sure that goes to you, to be able to let you know when we're doing something like that.
Yeah, so the answer to that question is we'll put it in the biweekly, and you can follow up on that.
Okay.
Does anybody else have questions that they'd like to ask? Or if you want to just unmute yourself and ask too, that's fine. Frankie has a question about the type of wood that you used for constructing the beds. What type of wood was it?
Yeah. I do not remember. Let me look up. I have the list here.
Was it pressure treated?
Yes, it was pressure treated, but I don't have the type. I don't know if it was pine or cedar. I don't think it was cedar, but I don't know what type of wood, but it was pressure treated.
I'm pretty sure it was just standard, Lowe's pressure treated wood. Nothing special.
Yeah, it looked like pine to me when we were setting it up. I don't think it was anything other than pine.
Yeah, I think you have to have pressure treated. It's outside, it's meeting the ground, in order
Yeah,
for it to last.
pine.
Yeah, and I think if you wanted cedar, you might need to increase your budget.
Exactly. Quite threefold maybe for cedar. Yeah, it's very expensive.
Okay, if anybody else has any questions here, go ahead and unmute yourself or put them in the chat, and I'll just do a reminder. So the March State Office webinar is going to be about the Piedmont Master Gardeners and their partnership with the Habitat for Humanity. They have a really great program where they've kind of developed relationships with people, and they help people moving into Habitat for Humanity houses get started with their gardens. So that'll be March 18th at 11 a.m. and the registration for that is on our website, which I will put the link in the chat. And this will also be recorded and posted on the same page. Okay, yeah, Charles is saying that you need the ground contact pressure treated in here.
I just wanted to add that the trees do get adequate light in the tubes and they grow nicely. And in fact, the tubes even sort of moderate temperatures, and particularly in the winter, and protect the seedlings. So there is adequate light for them to grow in the tube. And, I've had some on my own property that have doubled in size over a growing season.
Yeah, I'll look and see if there are any pubs on with the tubes, and then I'm also going to look and see if I can find any studies on root mass for bare root plants.
Yeah, we were originally going to try to do a test, and maybe that's what we do this next time of leaving something in the container, putting these in the bed. What's the difference? What does it look like then after those 3 to 6 months? What do those roots look like? So maybe I know that David had wanted to try to do that type of a test, but sky's the limit at this point for testing what we're doing.
That's a great idea. And maybe somebody in a different unit who watched this will want to start doing their own tests as well. And if anybody does do a project like this or, wants to try and figure it out, just get in touch with us and we can put you in touch with Loudoun, and we would love to support however would be helpful. So thanks so much, Barb, and all the other tree stewards who are here to answer questions.
Yes,
This will be
appreciate it.
recorded. I'll try and get it up there either today or Monday, because I think this is a really great resource, and I'm looking forward to seeing tons of gravel bed projects.
Exactly. More trees, more canopy.
Thanks, everybody, and
Thank you.
I will see y'all in March. I mean,